Welcome to the Jamesburg Presbyterian Church. Today is Wednesday, or rather Tuesday, November the 24th. Very happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Just in 2 days, we will be celebrating that time in which we remember the blessings that we have in our lives. It's been a tough year and might be difficult for some of us to see those blessings. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow in the devotional. I hope you'll tune in for that. I'm using a Barry Mitchell prop, and it's really spectacular. I hope you'll tune in. Today we're talking about the parable of the talents. This is from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. If you picked up one of the original sheets or outlines for the Bible study, which is titled Some of My Favorite Parables, you'll notice that today is allegedly the last day of this study. In fact, we're going to continue it for a little longer. Next week, we'll continue the chapter 25 of Matthew's Gospel using verses 31 through 46. It's called The Parable of the Sheep and Goats. And I think you'll really enjoy it, especially the goats part. I'm doing that for the benefit of somebody who doesn't like goats. Anyway, today we're doing the parable of the talents. One of the problems that the early church had is after the crucifixion and resurrection, the church was teaching that God would come back with the angels, that Jesus would return, there would be that second coming, the angels would come down, they would take care of all the evil that was in the world, they would rid the Palestine area, the Holy Lands, of the Romans, and God would begin a reign that would last forever. We would no longer have any kind of evil. We would no longer have selfish people. We would no longer have sin. Everything would be made right because God was coming back to reign in Jesus Christ. As time progressed and people did not see that second coming, they started to become disillusioned. The disillusionment started to undermine the teachings of the church. How can the church teach that God cares about justice in our world if the second coming is so delayed? The disciples began to die one after another. We saw the rise of the Roman Empire, persecution of Christians. It was hard to be a Christian back in those days because of what people were seeing in their world. So a new message had to be proclaimed, that we don't know when that second coming is coming, but that we need to be prepared for it nonetheless. We need to be found to be doing the right things in life, exercising our faith faithfully, and living the way Christ has taught us and called us to live. So Matthew takes one of Jesus' parables and positions it in chapter 25, which is a chapter about watching and waiting and being ready. So here's the story. Apparently there was a wealthy man who had a considerable amount of money. Obviously wealthy, considerable amount of money goes hand in hand. Anyway, he's going away for a long time. They didn't have banks, so he couldn't deposit his money into a bank. So he gave it to 3 of his workers, and these workers were given amounts that the master felt would work for each of them in accordance with their talents, their abilities, and there was no instruction as to what they were supposed to do with it. The assumption is you're going to take this money and hold on to it and keep it safe. So the master, first of all, gives to the first worker 5 talents, and then to the second worker 2 talents, and then to the third worker 1 talent. The first 2 workers go off and invest the money, and they double the amount. So now the first worker no longer has 5 talents, he has 10. And the second no longer has 2 talents, he has 4. But the third worker takes the talent and buries it for fear that he will lose it. So there's no risk involved. You're going to get back, Mr. what you gave me in the first place. Now, to put this into perspective, a talent was a huge sum of money. It was the equivalent of a day laborer's wages for an accumulation of 15 years. 15 years. One talent would be the equivalent of what a worker would make over a period of 15 years. So multiply that out, 5 times 15, 5 times 2, that's 10, or 5 times 2, or 15 times 2, that's 30 years worth of salary. And the last guy got 15 years worth of salary. So the worker goes off, or the master goes off, and the illusion here is that Jesus is that man who has gone off to a foreign country, and he is left behind to the followers, to Christ's followers, the affairs of the kingdom of God, the message of the church, the behavior that God calls us to live. All that's left to us, what are we doing with it? Are we hiding it? Are we using it? Are we building up the kingdom? Are we spreading it out over our lives and over the lives of those around us? Are we influencing people? You know, if you go on the internet today, you can read all about people who are called influencers. And these people are people who do things to influence others. Maybe it's buying a certain kind of product or doing some sort of behavior. Maybe it's a weight loss thing or some sort of self-help thing that you're doing anyway. You're influencing others by what you're doing. So the question becomes, are Christians influencing others in our world today? And if we look at the growth of the church right now, we would say, no, we are not influencing anyone. Because the church is in decline all over the world, especially in our country. Somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 churches close every single year. So we're not doing a very good job of proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ, proclaiming that lifestyle, proclaiming our faith in a God who loves us unconditionally. We're not doing a very good job of proclaiming that in our world today. So anyway, the owner comes back and brings each of the workers in to be accounted. And the first one says, you gave me 5, I'm giving you back 10. And the owner, the master in this story, says, you have done a great job. You enter into my joy. Let's celebrate. And because you've been faithful with the 5 and given me 10, I'm going to give you a lot more to be faithful in. The second worker, the same sort of story. You gave me 2, I'm giving you 4 back. I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely elated. You have done a great job. So you've been faithful in the 2, turning it into 4. So I'm going to give you even more to be faithful about. Come celebrate with me. The third one comes and says, I knew you were a hard man. You reap where you do not sow. You're harsh. You're mean. And I was afraid. And so I buried the 1 talent that you gave me, and I'm returning it to you. And it's interesting that the first 2 servants, the first 2 workers, didn't have that perspective of the master in this story. Did not have that perspective of the owner, the rich guy. They had a perspective of maybe even joy. You know, as a matter of fact, they see his generosity when he invites them in for the celebration. This doesn't seem to be a harsh, mean guy. But the third guy sees him that way. And what happens is there were no instructions, and this is the puzzling part of the parable. He gets back what he gave. You would think that the owner would be happy, but he's not. He says, you are not a good disciple. You are not a good worker. You have been faithless, and because you are faithless, I'm throwing you out. Go away. and this worker is thrown out to weep and wail and grind his teeth. There's contrasts in this story, the contrasts of joy and the contrasts of justice. The joy is the celebration that the first two enjoy. The justice is what the third worker gets. The third worker has hidden what he received. We could extend this to actual literally the talents and blessings that God has given to us. I alluded to this 2 Sundays ago in a sermon. God, we do have talents. We have things that we're capable of doing in our lives. Are we practicing with those talents? Are we using those talents? Are we influencing others with what we do? Are we loving others unconditionally, or are we withholding that love from the people around us? Are we showing joy in our lives, or are we showing the kind of gloom and doom that is so prevalent in our world today? Are we the ones that are lifting others up, or are we the ones that are holding others down? Are we making a difference or not? And that's the question. When Jesus does come back, when God holds us accountable, what will God see in our lives? Has God made a good investment in you? Has God given you the right gifts so that you are using those gifts to make a difference in the lives of others, certainly to make a difference in your own life? Are you making a difference in the world? Are you influencing anyone on the planet Earth? Or are you digging a hole and burying all these good things so that you give back to God in that day of reckoning exactly what God gave you in the first place? I know that when I don't practice the guitar, if I let a week go by, I'm not very good when it comes time to play. It's very important to keep on playing. If I'm doing illusions, I have to practice them before I do them many times, multiple times, so that I know exactly what I'm doing and I don't have to track what I'm doing as I'm doing it, so that I'm distracted by the mechanics of the illusion. We have to practice what we've been given. We have to do those things as we live our lives. And certainly it's very important to show the love of God in Jesus Christ to those around us. Unconditional love, unconditional tolerance, unconditional acceptance, regardless of anything. So have a happy Thanksgiving. Think about these things that I've just said, and think about how you can be an influencer. You can be a person who makes a difference or not. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Tomorrow, as I said, I will be doing a devotional day before Thanksgiving at 12 o'clock noon here. See you then. It's a Barry Mitchell prop. I know you will enjoy it if you watch. Thank you for being there today. Thank you for watching later on even. We will be on YouTube, and we will continue to download this on Facebook. Thank you. See you soon. Blessings to you.